Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hut. Now, I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off, I thought it would be a nice idea if everyone can leave a comment and let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episodes. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. It started just past midnight outside a Love's gas station in Amarillo. I just fueled up and grabbed a couple energy drinks and a sad-looking sandwich from the cooler. Route was pretty straightforward: Amarillo to Albuquerque, hauling frozen goods. Normally I don't mind the overnight hauls. Roads are quieter, less idiots drifting between lanes on their phones. It's peaceful, usually. I noticed the white sedan when I was pulling out of the lot. Noticed it in that way you notice anything sitting alone under those buzzing floodlights. It was just parked off to the side, not at a pump, engine running, lights off. Tinted windows. It wasn't doing anything, but something about it just stuck with me. I even mumbled, "That's a weird spot to park," to myself before merging back onto I-40. Didn't think too much about it until an hour later. I'd stopped at a little rest pull-off to check a rattling noise that turned out to be a loose bungee on the trailer. I stretched, walked around a bit, had a smoke. Middle of nowhere, total silence except for the low hum of cicadas and the occasional gust of wind brushing past the trees. Then, as I was climbing back up into the cab, headlights turned into the rest area behind me. White sedan. Now, at that point, I didn't recognize it for sure. I told myself there's 1,000 white sedans on the road. But it parked 2 spots over, didn't pull up close to the restrooms or vending machines, didn't shut the engine. Just sat there. I watched in the mirror for a minute. No door opened. No light inside. Just dark, motionless. That when I got that first twinge, that flicker in your gut that says something off. Still I tried to shake it, told myself I was tired, told myself I was being paranoid. I started up again and pulled back onto the highway. I was hauling a reefer, so I couldn't really speed too much, especially on those curves near Tucumcari, but I noticed a sedan about 5 minutes later, 2 cars back in the sparse night traffic. That could have been the end of it. I was hoping it would be. Maybe they just happened to stop at the same rest area. Maybe they were just heading the same way. Then I stopped again, this time at a Pilot about an hour outside Albuquerque, to use the restroom and grab a refill coffee. Parking lot was mostly empty except for a couple other rigs and 1 or 2 sedans, nothing unusual. I went inside, took my time, even browsed a bit, trying to wake myself up. When I came back out, maybe 15 minutes later, the same white sedan was sitting at the edge of the lot, under a dead street lamp. Again, the engine running. No one got out. This time I felt it hard. A cold sort of pressure in my chest, like my body was realizing something before my mind could catch up. I stood by my truck for a moment, pretending to check the tires, just watching that sedan out of the corner of my eye. It didn't move. It didn't idle forward or back. It didn't flick its lights. Just sat there. I climbed into the cab and waited. Maybe 5 minutes. 10. The sedan didn't move. Finally, I turned the key and eased out slow. Merged back onto the highway. Checked my mirrors constantly. It showed up again, like clockwork, 5 minutes later. 2 cars back. I started testing it. I took the next exit, some little no-name place with a boarded-up diner and a gas station that looked abandoned. Pulled into a wide gravel turnoff, shut off my lights. The road was dead quiet. 2 minutes later, I saw headlights. Same low slang shape. White sedan. It didn't pull into the gravel, just slowed down and kept going. I waited another 10 minutes, heart thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Then I pulled back onto the road, headed the opposite direction, circled back to the highway farther west. And again, within 15 minutes, the white sedan was behind me. At that point I started talking out loud, just muttering things like, "What the hell is this, and why are you following me?" like I was trying to hear myself make sense of it. I didn't have a weapon on me. Not even a pocket knife. Most nights I don't feel like I need one. Most nights, other truckers are the only ones I even see, and they're usually decent folks. I felt exposed in a way I haven't felt in years. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even say? Someone in a white sedan is driving on the highway near me. That'd go nowhere. And even if they were following me, technically they hadn't done anything. Not yet. I kept driving, trying to think. My drop-off was still 2 hours away, and I had no idea if this person planned to follow me all the way there. What freaked me out wasn't just the following. It was the silence of it. No contact. No road rage. No one flashing brights or honking or shouting. Just watching. I tried losing them again. Took an off-ramp and drove into a residential neighborhood. Quiet streets, dim orange streetlights. Wound through it for maybe 10 minutes, turning randomly. Then parked under a tree and killed the engine. Sat there, staring in the mirror. The sedan crept by 4 minutes later. Didn't stop. Just glided by like it didn't see me. I don't know why, but that somehow scared me more than if it had pulled up. It meant they were still looking. That I hadn't shaken them. That they were actively scanning for me. I stayed put another 20 minutes. Didn't see the sedan again. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe they gave up. I started driving again, slow, cautious, no headlights behind me for a while. Got back on my highway at a different rampway west of where I left it. 15-20 minutes went by, then in the meter headlights white sedan. That's when I stopped playing games. I called the state troopers. Told them I was being followed by a suspicious vehicle, gave them my route or license plate direction. They said they'd send someone to check it out. I didn't expect much, but at least it was logged. Then I pulled into a well-lit way station that I knew was staffed. Parked. Got out. Walked into the office like I wasn't worried at all. Asked about inspection hours. Chatted. Made sure the guy behind the glass saw me, noted me. While I was talking, I saw it again. The sedan rolled past the station. Slow. Didn't stop. Didn't even hesitate. Just kept going. I waited another 10 minutes, then asked the guy if I could park there for a while. He didn't tear. Said drivers crashed there all the time. I sat in my cab and waited. Didn't move. Tipped my lights off. After about 30 minutes, I started to relax. Maybe they gave up. Maybe seeing me talk to someone did the trick. I cracked the window and started unwrapping that sandwich from earlier. Then I saw it. Far back, down the highway, maybe 200 yards. Pulled off onto the shoulder, just barely in view of the station's floodlights. White sedan. Facing me. Not moving. I watched it for 10, maybe 15 minutes. It never got closer. Never backed up. Just sat there like it was waiting to see if I'd come back out. I called the troopers again. Told them the car was still there, still following me. This time the dispatcher took it more seriously. Said a car was nearby and would swing by. Asked me to stay put. Maybe 5 minutes later, I saw flashing lights on the horizon. The cruiser came down the road, slow. When it got close to the sedan, it stopped. Pulled up behind it. I couldn't see what happened next from my angle, too far, too dark, but a minute later, both cars drove off. I never got a call back. Never found out who it was, what they wanted. No one contacted me to follow up. I finished my route in silence, watching every mile behind me. Dropped off the load at dawn, didn't even wait to check in with the dock guys. I just wanted to go home. I've been driving for 18 years, been through snowstorms, drunks. A guy once tried to climb onto my rig at a rest stop outside Vegas, but nothing has ever messed with my head like that night, because they never did anything, never rolled down a window, never flashed their lights, never got out, they just followed. I was driving back from visiting my sister in Idaho. She just had her first baby and I stayed longer than I planned, so I left around 9 at night instead of early morning like I meant to. I figured I'd make it to a motel by around 2 a.m. Not ideal, but I've done plenty of night driving before. I wasn't nervous or anything. I had a full tank of coffee and true crime podcast queued up, ironically. Around midnight, I had to pee pretty bad. I'd been holding it for a while, waiting for. That's when I heard it. A banging sound. Sharp, frantic. Metal on metal, from across the lot. I stopped in my tracks. I turned and saw a man, mid-30s maybe, pounding both fists against the side of a semi-truck's cab. Not the trailer, the actual driver's cab. The truck was parked farthest from the building, near the tree line. He was shouting something, but I couldn't make it out at first. I hesitated. Took a few steps toward my car. But the sound of his yelling got clearer as I moved closer. She's inside. She's inside. Call the cops. I froze. The way he was burning desperate like full body hits wasn't right. I thought maybe it was a domestic situation. Maybe a woman locked herself inside to get away from him. Or maybe he was having a mental break. Either way, I didn't want to get close. He saw me then. Whipped around and started half running, half stumbling toward me. Hey. Please. She's trapped in there. I took a step back and said, who? That was all I managed. He pointed back at the truck, breathing hard. He locked her in. She was yelling for help. I had her. He locked her in the cab. Please call 911. I didn't move, didn't take my phone out. I was trying to make sense of it. He looked disheveled, shirt soaked through, scraped knuckles, dirty jeans, but his eyes were wide and terrified, like he was scared of whatever was in that truck. Why don't you call? I asked. My phone's in my car. He said. I just stopped to pee. I wasn't even going to stay, and I heard her screaming. I tried the door, but it's locked. Please, you have a phone, right? He motioned for me to follow, already heading back toward the truck. I didn't move. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The truck he'd been banging on, the one with the supposed woman inside, it wasn't running. No lights on. No sound. But the side window curtain was open just to crack. Just enough that, if someone was watching from inside, they could see everything happening below. I don't think I should get closer, I said, still standing near the bathroom. What if the guy inside has a gun? He stopped walking. Turned slowly toward me. His expression changed, not angry and not threatening, but like he suddenly realized how this looked. Like it had just hit him. He raised his hands a little. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I didn't know what to do. I thought someone was getting hurt. I didn't think, He looked back at the truck. Can you just call the police? He asked, quieter now. I finally pulled my phone out and started dialing. As I did, I noticed a fourth truck at the far end of the lot, facing the opposite direction. It hadn't been there when I parked. No lights, no engine, just suddenly there. The man saw me glance past him and turned too. Is that new? He asked. I nodded. I didn't see it before. Neither of us said anything for a second. Then a light flicked on inside that new truck, just a faint glow from the sleeper compartment. He turned back to me again, fast. Please call. Please. Something's wrong. The 911 dispatcher answered. I explained where I was, what I saw, and what the man had said. She asked if anyone had made threats or if I'd witnessed an altercation. No, I said. Just him banging on a truck and saying someone's locked inside. She told me to stay put, that a state trooper was unloved. I told the man that help was coming. He nodded, rubbing his face like he was trying to hold himself together. Then we heard it. From the same truck he'd been banging on, just faint, but there a thud. Like someone shifting their weight inside. Or dropping something. We both looked at each other. Did you hear that? He asked. I nodded. He looked toward the truck again. That's the first noise in 10 minutes. Before, she was yelling. Now nothing. I stayed rooted. I was locked between wanting to help and every single instinct in me screaming, stay where you are. The dispatcher asked if I could still see the man. I said yes. Then she asked, can you see anyone in the truck? I looked again. The curtain in the truck was now completely shut. That slit that had been open. Gone. I told her. A few minutes later, red and blue lights came up the on-ramp. 2 troopers stepped out. They talked to the man, who repeated everything, what he had, what he saw, how he tried to open the cab. One trooper knocked on the truck door, called out. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. Eventually they opened the door themselves. I stood back near the bathroom, hugging my arms, a heart racing. They climbed up. One of them shouted something inside. I couldn't hear the response. Then they both went quiet. After a few minutes, one of them came down. He talked to the man for a while. I didn't catch much. The trooper looked serious, but not panicked. Later, I asked if everyone was okay. He said there was no one else in the truck. Just the driver. He was asleep. I asked, no woman. He shook his head. No, they kept talking to the man. Eventually they asked for my statement. I gave it. They didn't seem suspicious of me or him, just confused. They let me go. Not long after, I don't know if the man imagined it or if he really did hear something. He didn't strike me as crazy, just panicked, convicted, like he knew what he'd had. All I know is that when I drove off, I passed that fourth truck again. The one that showed up after me. The cabin light was still on, but no one was sitting in the driver's seat. It was around 3:30 in the afternoon when I saw him. Just past Basto, heading east. I'd pulled off to stretch and check a weird noise coming from under the cab. Turned out to be nothing, just some loose straps. When I got back in, I saw this guy walking along the shoulder, maybe mid-30s. Duffel bag slung over one shoulder. It was hot as hell. Must have been 95, and the wind was dry enough to burn your skin. Normally, I don't pick people up. I've been driving long enough to know better. But I don't know, he didn't look sketchy. No sign, not trying to flag anybody. Just walking, sweating, keeping his head down. And I was tired. Not sleepy tired, just tired of the road. Tired of podcasts, tired of the same music I've heard 100 times. I guess I just wanted to talk to someone for a little while. I slowed down and gave a little honk. He turned, looked surprised. I motioned toward the passenger door. He jogged up. First thing he said was, "You sure?" Not like he was worried about me, but like he was the inconvenience. I told him, just don't bleed on my seats and we are good, trying to keep it light. He gave a tired smile and climbed in. Shook my hand. Name was Kyle. Said he was heading east. I didn't say where exactly. Wherever the road takes me, he said. I didn't press it. We drove for a while. He was quiet, but not awkward. Told me he used to work construction. Said he was trying to get to Colorado and maybe Wyoming. Talked about sleeping under bridges, said it like it was no big deal. He didn't ask for money, he didn't try to sell me a sob story. Just rode along, looking out the window. At a truck stop near Needles, I asked if he wanted to grab something to eat. He said he was fine, but I insisted, figured it was the least I could do. He grabbed a sandwich and a bottle of water, thanked me again, real polite. That's when I figured I'd drop him off a little further down, maybe around Kingman, Arizona. I had a load to drop off just south of Flagstaff, so it wasn't out of the way. He seemed fine with that. Wherever, he said again. After a while, I forgot he was even there. Just another body in the passenger seat. We didn't talk much after the food stop. He just stared ahead or nodded off here and there. It was getting dark by the time we hit the Arizona state line. I mentioned I'd be pulling into a rest area to sleep for a bit before finishing the run. Figured I'd let him out there if he could find another ride or set up camp for the night. He didn't say anything at first, just kind of stared forward. Then, after a few seconds, he said, I haven't reached my destination yet. I thought he was joking. Said something like, well, I am going to the Atlantic, so you might want to hop off soon. He didn't laugh, just turned and looked at me. His face was not angry, not sad, just blank, like he didn't understand what I was saying. I'm not there yet, he said again, a little farmer. That's when the vibe changed. I kind of half laughed and said, well, man, I gotta sleep. I can drop you in Kingman. That's about as far as I'm going tonight. No, he said. I'm not getting out yet. I didn't say anything. Just kept driving. We got to the rest area maybe 20 minutes later. I climbed into the sleeper, locked the doors, and tried to settle in. I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept hearing little sounds, shifting gravel, the rattle of vending machine doors, faint footsteps. At one point, I sat up and peeked through the curtain. Kyle was sitting on the bench near the building, not doing anything, just sitting, facing my truck, under one of those buzzing yellow lights. I told myself he'd move on. That he'd hitch another ride. That maybe he was just a little off, but harmless. But every time I opened the curtain, he was still there. Same position. Same posture. Just staring. At around 2 a.m., the other semi pulled out. Not long after, the minivan left too. Kyle didn't move. Then, at 2:40 or so, the power went out. Not in the whole area, just the building. The outside lights shut off. Vending machines, bathrooms, everything. Like someone hit a breaker. That's when I lost sight of him. I stared into the dark for a long time. My heart was going crazy. I kept listening for footsteps. For banging on the door. But it never came. Then, real quiet, I heard the crunch of gravel somewhere behind the truck. Just once. Then nothing. I slid into the driver's seat, engine off, trying to stay low. Tried to look out the side mirror, but couldn't see much. Then I heard the passenger door handle. Just a soft rattle. Once. Twice. Then silence again. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, I turned the key. Headlights came on, nothing in front of me. I turned the cab lights on, no one inside. I threw it into drive and peeled out of the lot faster than I probably should have. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. I didn't see another car for miles. I kept checking the mirrors every few seconds, expecting to see headlights that matched the ones from earlier, or worse, nothing at all, just someone clinging to the back of the trailer. I didn't stop again until sunrise. I did a full walk around of the truck. No signs of anything. Doors all sealed. Back trailer locked up tight. I don't know what Kyle's deal was. Maybe he was just mentally ill. Maybe he was messing with me. Maybe he thought he had to be there, like some made-up mission in his head. But I've picked up a few hitchhikers since then, not many, only when I really have to, but I never let them in the cab for long, and I always lock the doors when I sleep. I drive a 2020 Freightliner, mostly long hauls through the Midwest and South. Been doing this almost 8 years now, solo. I've gotten used to sleeping in the cab, used to truck stop food, used to silence. I actually like it. The quiet's kind of the whole point for me. This happened about a year ago, just outside of Amarillo. It was early March, still cold at night. I'd picked up a load in Albuquerque that was heading east, and I had a little wiggle room in the schedule. I figured I'd get a few hours of sleep before pushing into Oklahoma. There's this rest area about 40 minutes outside of Amarillo, and nothing fancy, but it's always pretty empty, which I like. I've been there before, no issues. That night, I pulled in around 11:45 p.m. There were 2 other semis already parked, both dark, no sign of life, one car way at the end, probably someone sleeping like me. The wind was blowing hard and there was a dusting of snow on the ground, not enough to stick but enough to leave smears on the asphalt. I locked up like I always do. Driver's side door first, then passenger side, then I checked both again. Call it habit or paranoia, but I always double check. Especially when I'm out in the middle of nowhere like that. It's just easier to sleep when I know everything's shut tight. I climbed into the sleeper, pulled the curtain, then laid down with my jacket over me. I keep the sleeper pretty minimal. Just a pillow, a blanket I barely use, and a little clip-on fan I run for white noise. I usually leave my boots on the floor by the bed, keys, and wallet in the overhead cubby. I woke up to cold air hitting my face. That was the first thing, cold air, and this sound like plastic flapping. I opened my eyes, not all the way awake yet, everything felt off, the white noise was gone, the fan had shut off. I sat up, the curtain was still drawn, but I could see light from the cab leaking in around the edges, not normal. I always turn everything off. That's when I noticed a breeze. Not just cold moving air like from outside. I leaned forward, pushed the curtain aside, and just sat there for a second trying to understand what I was looking at. The passenger side door was wide open. Not cracked. Open. All the way. The dome light was on, weak and yellow, and the cold air was blowing in hard. My dash was lit up. That annoying door ajar alert was blinking. I didn't move right away. Just stared at it. My heart hadn't caught up to my brain yet. I was still half asleep, trying to convince myself I'd messed up and forgot to lock it. But I never forget to lock the doors. I check them. I always check them. And then I looked down. Right between the seats, leading from the step up to the cab were muddy footprints, just two, one on the passenger side floor mat, the other half on the mat, half on the plastic edge that leads to the sleeper, then one more, right next to my boots. There weren't any on the driver's side. Just those three coming in. None going back out. The worst part. They were wet. Fresh. I reached up and yanked the curtain all the way back. Looked around the sleeper like someone might still be in there with me. But it was empty. Nothing. Still, I checked under the bed, behind the seats, even opened the storage cubbies, which doesn't even make sense now that I think about it, like a full-grown person could hide in a space barely big enough for a duffel bag. I leaned out and shut the door. Locked it. Then I sat back down on the edge of the bed, staring at the footprints. I didn't know what to do. Calling the cops felt ridiculous. Hey, someone opened my truck door and stepped inside, maybe. What would they even do? I looked out the windows. The other trucks were still parked. No one moving. No lights on. It was dead quiet except for the wind. I kept thinking, if someone got in, they had to have left. I mean, they weren't there now. And if they did leave, then I didn't hear it. I didn't feel the truck shift. Nothing woke me up until the cold air hit. But the footprints didn't make sense. If they left, where were the ones going out? I got up, unlocked the driver's door, and stepped outside. Walked around to the other side. There were more footprints. In the snow-dusted dirt, leading away from my truck. Not a lot. Just 2 or 3, heading off toward the tree line that runs along the back edge of the rest stop. They weren't boots. They were bare feet. Long, narrow, toes spread out like whoever it was had been walking barefoot for a while. The prints were clean, deep enough to show weight. And then they just stopped maybe 15 feet from the truck in the dirt. The prints ended nothing past that, like the person walked into the trees and vanished. I didn't follow, I just stood there, looking out into the dark. I couldn't see anything past the first row of trees. It was too dark. I walked back around, got in the cab, locked both doors again. Checked 3 times. I thought about starting the engine and leaving, but my clock was maxed up for driving hours. If I got pulled over or hit a way station, I'd be screwed. So I sat there. Eventually, I lay back down, fully dressed, curtain wide open, keys in hand. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I waited until full daylight before getting out again. The footprints in the cab were dry by then, but still there. Smudged, muddy outlines on the grey vinyl. I got out, checked the ground again. The ones in the dirt were gone, blown away or melted from the sun. The other trucks were still there, but one had a new driver in it. I knocked on his door and asked if he'd been there all night. He said no, he pulled in around 5 a.m. I cleaned the prints off the floor with some bottled water and napkins from a truck stop later that day. Didn't tell anyone. Not dispatch, not my brother, who I usually talk to on longer runs. I didn't want the story out there. Didn't want people thinking I'd been asleep with the door unlocked. Or worse, thinking I was going crazy. But I've thought about it a lot. Someone opened that door, came inside, took 3 steps toward my bed, then left somehow without making a sound or leaving a trail back out. I lock the doors differently now. I jam a steel rod between the door handles just in case the lock fails or someone tries to pop it. I sleep with a crowbar next to the bed and I don't park at that rest area anymore. I drive a 2019 Kenworth T680, mostly long hauls through the Midwest. I climbed into the sleeper, pulled the curtain, then laid down with my jacket over me. I keep the sleeper pretty minimal. Just a pillow, a blanket I barely use, and a little clip-on fan I run for white noise. I usually leave my boots on the floor by the bed, keys and wallet in the overhead cubby. I woke up to cold air hitting my face. That was the first thing. Cold air, and this sound like plastic flapping. I opened my eyes, not all the way awake yet. Everything felt off. The white noise was gone, the fan had shut off, I sat up, the curtain was still drawn but I could see light from the cab leaking in around the edges, not normal. I always turn everything off that when I noticed a breeze, not just cold moving air, like from outside. I leaned forward, pushed the curtain aside, and just sat there for a second trying to understand what I was looking at. The passenger side door was wide open. Not cracked. Open. Open. All the way. The dome light was on, weak and yellow, and the cold air was blowing in hard. My dash was lit up. That annoying door ajar alert was blinking. I didn't move right away, just stared at it. My heart hadn't caught up to my brain yet. I was still half asleep, trying to convince myself I'd messed up and forgot to lock it. But I never forget to lock the doors. I checked them. I always check them. And then I looked down. Right between the seats, leading from the step up to the cab, were muddy footprints. Just two. One on the passenger side floor mat, the other half on the mat, half on the plastic edge that leads to the sleeper. Then one more. Right next to my boots. There weren't any on the driver's side. Just those three. Coming in. None going back out. The worst part. They were wet. Fresh. I reached up and yanked the curtain all the way back. Looked around the sleeper like someone might still be in there with me. But it was empty. Nothing. Still, I checked under the bed, behind the seats, even opened the storage cubbies, which doesn't even make sense now that I think about it, like a folk-room person could hide in a space barely big enough for a duffel bag. I leaned out and shut the door. Locked it. Then I sat back down on the edge of the bed, staring at the footprints. I didn't know what to do. Calling the cops felt ridiculous. Hey, someone opened my truck door and stepped inside, maybe. What would they even do? I looked out the windows. The other trucks were still parked, no one moving, no lights on, it was dead quiet except for the wind. I kept thinking if someone got in they had to have left, I mean they weren't there now, and if they did leave I didn't hear it, I didn't feel the truck shift, nothing woke me up until the cold air hit, but the footprints didn't make sense. If they left, where were the ones going out? I got up, unlocked the driver's door, and stepped outside. Walked around to the other side. There were more footprints. In the snow-dusted dirt, leading away from my truck. Not a lot. Just 2 or 3, heading off toward the tree line that runs along the back edge of the rest stop. They weren't boots. They were bare feet. Long, narrow, toes spread out like whoever it was had been walking barefoot for a while. The prints were clean, deep enough to show weight. And then they just stopped. Maybe 15 feet from the truck, in the dirt, the prints ended. Nothing past that. Like the person walked into the trees and vanished. I didn't follow. I just stood there, looking out into the dark. I couldn't see anything past the first row of trees. It was too dark. I walked back around, got in the cab, locked both doors again. Checked them 3 times. I thought about starting the engine and leaving, but my clock was maxed out for driving hours. If I got pulled over or hit a way station, I'd be screwed. So I sat there. Eventually I lay back down, fully dressed, curtain wide open, keys in hand. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I waited until full daylight before getting on again. The footprints in the cab were dry by then, but still there. Smudged, muddy outlines on the grey vinyl. I got out, checked the ground again. The ones in the dirt were gone. Blown away or melted from the sun. The other trucks were still there, but one had a new driver in it. I knocked on his door and asked if he'd been there all night. He said no, he pulled in around 5 a.m. I cleaned the prints off the floor with some bottled water and napkins from a truck stop later that day. Didn't tell anyone, not dispatch, not my brother, who I usually talk to on longer runs. I didn't want the story out there. Didn't want people thinking I'd been asleep with the door unlocked. Or worse, thinking I was going crazy. But I've thought about it a lot. Someone opened that door, came inside, took 3 steps toward my bed, then left somehow without making a sound or leaving a trail back out. I lock the doors differently now. I jam a steel rod between the door handles just in case the lock fails or someone tries to pop it. I sleep with a crowbar next to the bed. And I don't park at that rest area anymore. My car broke down on a back road in Tennessee around 6 in the evening. I remember the time because it was just starting to get dark, but not dark enough to freak me out yet. I'd taken a wrong turn off the main highway trying to find a gas station. Waze had said there was one a few miles off the exit. There wasn't. Instead, I ended up on some 2-lane road that ran past empty fields and rusted out barns. No signs, no cell service. After about 15 minutes of driving with nothing in sight, my engine sputtered, made this ugly knocking sound, and the car just died. I coasted to the gravel shoulder, put on my hazards, and sat there. I waited maybe 20 minutes, just hoping another car would come by. I didn't want to get out. I wasn't dressed for walking, leggings, rolled sweatshirt, and slip-ons. No jacket. I was galled. It was dead quiet except for the ticks of the engine cooling off. Then I saw headlights coming from the opposite direction. A big, wreck, older-looking Peterbilt kind of beat up. I stood up and waved my arms. The driver slowed and stopped running. Right next to me. Window rolled down, and this guy leaned out. Late 50s maybe, heavy, a scruffy beard. His hat said something about auto parts. He looked normal enough. You okay? He asked. I told him my car died and I didn't have signal. He nodded, like he saw that sort of thing all the time. Ain't much out here. Closest garage is about 10 miles that way. He pointed behind me. I can take you. I hesitated. But what choice did I have? It was either him or stay out there all night, alone, with no heat. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat and locked the car. He reached across the cab and pushed the door open. The truck smelled like old fast food and diesel, which I expected. There was a half-empty bottle of Mountain Dew in the cup holder, some crumpled receipts, and a faded photo of a little girl taped to the dash. She looked maybe 5. Don't mind the mess, he said, chuckling. Ain't had a co-pilot in a while. He told me his name was Ray. Said he was local, used to run longer hauls but stuck to regional stuff now. Talked a lot, mostly about traffic, truck stops, weather. I nodded along, trying to keep calm. He didn't do anything weird. Didn't ask anything too personal. Just drove. After maybe 15 minutes, he flicked his blinker on and turned onto this gravel road. No signs, no lights. Just trees on both sides and barely enough space for the truck. This don't look like a main road, I said. It ain't. It's a shortcut, he said. Garage is just up ahead. I didn't say anything, but I kept looking around. The trees were thick. No houses, no other cars. Just woods in that road. A few minutes later, we came around a bend and I saw it, an old building with a rusted out sign that said service. One gas pump out front, cracked windows, roof sagging. It looked wrong, not just old abandoned. Ray pulled in and stopped. This is it, he said, like it was nothing. I didn't move this place open here, he said, but he didn't sound convincing. Buddy of mine runs it. Probably in the back. He hopped down from the truck and started toward the building. He didn't wait for me. Just walked up and pushed the door open like he'd been there 1,000 times. I stayed where I was. I didn't want to go in. A minute passed. Then another. I looked around. No lights on. No sound. Just the wind in the trees and the ticking of the truck's engine. I climbed down from the cab and stood there. My skin felt tight, like something was about to happen but hadn't yet. I looked at the building again. The door was half open. Still no lights. I called out. "Ray?" No answer. I waited 30 more seconds, then I took a step. Or did he find it like he found me? I was out on a long haul from Tulsa to Salt Lake hauling a full load of aluminum sheeting. Pretty standard route, nothing special. I'd gotten a late start that day, left the yard around 4 p.m., so I knew I'd be driving into the night. That didn't bother me much. I actually prefer nights, less traffic, a smoother ride. Around 11:30 or so, I pulled off into this little town in western Kansas. I'd been running low on fuel and needed to grab a snack and stretch my legs. The place was quiet, maybe too quiet. One gas station open, lights buzzing overhead, a couple of pumps, and a tiny convenience store attached. Looked like one of those towns that had peaked 40 years ago and just never left that era. I fueled up fast, then went inside to pay in cash. The guy behind the counter was young, maybe 19 or 20, pale with greasy hair, barely looked up when I walked in. Didn't say much, just rang me up, handed me my change, then went right back to staring at his phone. No big deal. I grabbed a Gatorade and a sandwich from the fridge and went back out to the truck. I did a quick walk around before climbing in, like I always do. I've had enough tire blowouts and trailer issues to know it's worth the extra minute. When I got to the back of the trailer, I noticed something weird wedged in the handle of the right door. A little folded piece of paper tucked in tight where the seal meets the latch. I pulled it out. It was dirty and damp around the edges like it had been handled with sweaty hands or dropped in the grass. Inside, in small, shaky handwriting, it said, "She's still alive. Hurry." No punctuation. Just that. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it. I didn't really know how to process it. My first thought was maybe someone had mistaken my rig for someone else's. Or maybe it was just some dumb prank. But the handwriting didn't look like a joke. It looked desperate. I opened the back just to check. Everything looked fine. The straps were tight, the pallets were still wrapped and undisturbed. No sign anyone had touched anything. I even shined a light around inside just in case. Nothing. I glanced around the lot again. Still empty except for one other car off to the side, an old Lincoln, brown and boxy. Couldn't see anyone in it, and the windows were too tinted to make out details. I stood there for a few more seconds, listening. No wind, no bugs, just the soft electric hum from the gas station sign. I got back in the cab and locked the doors. That note, it really got in my head. I kept replaying it as I got back on the highway. I must have reread it 20 times before I stuffed it in the cup holder. I even checked the trailer again an hour later at a rest stop just to be sure I hadn't missed something. Still nothing. I kept rolling, but I felt off. Couldn't explain it. Not scared exactly, more like agitated. Like something was off kilter and I couldn't figure out what. A little after 2 a.m. I pulled into a big rest area, not quite to the Colorado line yet. There were a few other trucks already parked, so I found a spot, till the engine, and climbed in the sleeper to grab a few hours of rest. I don't usually sleep heavy on the road, but that night I must have knocked out hard because I jolted awake a couple hours later, totally disoriented. Something had woken me up. I didn't know what at first, just had that weird scent. Like when your dream ends too abruptly. Then I heard it. A faint scraping noise. Very light. Like something brushing against metal. I sat up slowly and listened. It was coming from the back of the cab. Not the sleeper area outside. Right where the trailer connects. I slipped my boots on, grabbed my flashlight, and climbed into the driver's seat. I sat there for a second, the heart thumping, trying to decide if I was just being paranoid. But the sound came again, quick, like someone tapping something against the trailer skin. Not wind. Not branches. Sharp, short taps. I cracked the door and stepped out. The air was cold and dead quiet. I walked slowly along the side of the trailer, light in one hand, the other on the handle of the pocket knife I keep clipped to my jeans. My boots crunched gravel underfoot, loud in the silence. I rounded the back of the trailer and swept the light across it. No one was there. I checked the latch, still sealed, still locked. I looked around the rest area, nothing but parked trucks and empty benches. Then I noticed the Lincoln again. The same one from the gas station. I swear it was the same one, the same dull brown color, same busted rear tail light. It was parked at the far end of the lot now, just barely under the light. Still couldn't see anyone inside. I stood there a minute, staring at it. My mouth felt dry. I wasn't sure what I was even looking for. Then, I saw the driver's side door. It was cracked open. Just a couple inches. No movement. I backed up slowly, got back in my cab, and locked both doors again. I left the light off and just sat there, staring through the windshield. Nothing happened for a long time. Maybe an hour. Just silence. Around 4:30 I finally decided to leave. I figured if someone was screwing with me, the last thing I wanted was to sit around waiting for it to get worse. As I pulled out, I passed the Lincoln. No one was inside. I looked close. The interior was totally stripped. No seats. No wheel. It wasn't even drivable. Just a shell. I kept going. I didn't stop again until I hit the outskirts of Denver. I found a well-lit truck stop and parked right in front of the store. Got a cup of coffee, tried to calm my nerves. I didn't check the trailer again until the delivery. Everything was in place. Nothing missing. But when I opened the back to unload, I found another note. This one was tucked into the corner where the wall meets the floor, like it had been dropped or blown back there. Same handwriting. She was in the walls. Too late now. I don't know what the hell any of it meant. The guy unloading the truck saw me staring at the note and asked if everything was alright. I told him yeah. Just tired. I still think about those notes. I never told my dispatcher or the cops or anyone else. What would I even say? I check my trailer a little more often now. And I don't stop in those tiny towns if I can help it. Especially not at night. And I always check the walls. I've been driving trucks for almost 15 years, so I've seen my fair share of weird things. But this one still gets to me. It wasn't even that long ago, maybe 6 months, and I haven't been able to shake it since. I was coming off a long haul from St. Louis to some small industrial town just outside of Denver. The trailer I was hauling was unmarked, just a plain white box, nothing special. I thought it was odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Sometimes they do that when they don't want people knowing what's inside. And you get used to it in the business. You get a load, you haul it, you drop it off. That's how it works. I got to the place around 10 p.m. It was a lot quieter than I expected. The warehouse was tucked away at the edge of town, a small, rundown place. The lights were on, but the parking lot was mostly empty. The kind of place where you think a lot of stuff happens late at night. Big steel gates, high walls, no sign of any security. I pulled up to the dock and stopped. As I was getting out of the truck, I looked around. Something about the place just felt off, you know. The silence was weird. I didn't hear the usual sounds you expect at a warehouse. No forklifts, no other trucks, nothing. The loading bay door was cracked open, maybe a foot or so. I thought it was strange. Usually, they keep it closed until the driver's ready to back in. I figured they might have been busy, but it didn't sit right with me. I got out, walked toward the building, and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. So, I moved over to the loading bay door, and that's when I saw it. Through the crack in the door, there was a figure, someone moving on the other side. At first, I thought it was just a worker. But as I got closer, I could see more clearly. There was a man standing there, pressed up against the door, his face pale, covered in blood. He was trying to signal me, raising one hand in small, jerky motions, like he wanted to get my attention. I froze for a second. My first thought was that maybe he had an accident or something, but the blood, it didn't look like it was from any kind of minor injury. It was smeared all over his face, neck, then hands, dark and sticky. I could barely make out his features. His eyes were wide, and his mouth was open, but there was no sound coming from him. I didn't know what to do. The first instinct I had was to walk away to get back to my truck and call the cops, but I couldn't move. The guy, he was looking at me so desperately. I left a message, didn't even know what to say. I've got a guy bleeding in the loading bay. Someone needs to come down here. But it felt stupid as I said it, like it wouldn't matter. I walked back to the loading bay door. The man was still there, his hands pressed against the crack, his body barely visible now, hunched low, like he was trying to squeeze through. I looked around again. There was no one in sight. The place felt like it was dead, or like I was the only one who existed. I felt like a damn idiot, but I finally decided to open the door a little more. Just a bit. Maybe he was stuck. Maybe he just needed a little help getting out. Maybe I could get him to a hospital, get him some help. I pulled the door open maybe 6 inches. That's when I saw them. The guy, the bloody guy, was just one of a group. There were at least 3 others, all crouched behind him, hidden just out of sight. They were waiting. Watching. Their eyes locked on me as soon as the door moved. I could see their faces, twisted, sick, eyes sunken deep in their skulls. Blood. Everywhere. But not just blood. They were all covered in it. They didn't look hurt themselves. They looked like they'd been the ones who'd done it. To each other. The guy in front, the one who had been signaling me, collapsed forward, his body slamming against the floor inside the warehouse, and I saw a dark smear of blood spread out beneath him. I don't know how long I stood there. I just froze, staring at them. They didn't move, it didn't make a sound. Just stared back, as silent and still. I snapped out of it. I slammed the door shut so hard it shook the building. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. I turned around and ran for my truck. I jumped in, slammed the door, and started the engine before I even realized what I was doing. I floored it. I don't think I looked back, but I heard the sound of the door rattling, and then nothing. No movement. Just the quiet hum of my engine. I sped down the road, my hands gripping the wheel like I was trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. I didn't stop until I was way past the city. I pulled into a truck stop near the highway, parked, and locked the doors. It took me hours before I could finally calm down enough to think straight. I never did get the guy's name, and I didn't call anyone after I left. I didn't want to explain it. I don't know what happened in that warehouse, but I know I'm not going back there. I haven't seen anything like it since, but I still remember the look in those guys' eyes, like they were waiting for something. Waiting for me. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. I've been driving trucks for a long time. Long enough to know when something feels off. This story, what happened to me a few months ago, still messes with my head. It started on Wednesday night about 11 p.m. I just pulled into a rest stop off one of those quiet places with a couple of trucks parked in the lot, not many people there, which was fine by me. I didn't need company, just a place to crash for the night. I parked my rig, locked the doors, and crawled into the sleeper cab. By the time I settled in, it was already quiet, the kind of silence that only happens on the road when everyone else is asleep. I didn't think anything of it. I dozed off pretty quick. The next morning, I woke up and went to do my usual check before starting the truck. Walked around the rig, checked the tires, and made sure everything was good. As I got to the driver's side mirror, I saw something hot taped to it. It was a Polaroid picture. I pulled it off the mirror, and it was a shot of me asleep in my sleeper cab, taken through the window. It was blurry and grainy, but there was no mistaking it, that was me, and I hadn't had a damn thing the night before. I figured it was some prank, some kid messing with me. Maybe someone thought it'd be funny. I tossed it in the trash and got on with my day. But then it happened again the next night. Same rest stop. Same time. This time, I caught it before I even got out of the truck. There it was, taped to the side mirror again. Another Polaroid, and this time, the picture was clearer. It was me, asleep again, but this time someone had taken it from a different angle, like they were standing on the other side of the truck, looking in through the passenger side. I didn't know what to think. It wasn't a prank anymore, it felt different. I tore it off the mirror and looked around, half expecting someone to be standing there, laughing. But there was nothing. Just the quiet of the rest stop. I checked the cab, locked all the doors, and then went inside, thinking maybe I was just overthinking things. I was on edge, but I had work to do. The third night, I was back at that same rest stop. I made sure to park in a different spot, hoping that maybe the prankster would get bored. But no. Same damn thing, Polaroid taped to the side mirror. This time the photo was closer, like it was taken while someone was standing right there inches from the truck. I could see the reflection of the window in the photo, the silhouette of my cab and me sleeping. My heart started racing. I couldn't believe it. I thought about calling the cops, but I didn't know what to say. Someone's taking pictures of me while I sleep. They think I was crazy. But the weird part was, I hadn't heard anything at all. There was no noise, no footsteps, no one knocking on the door. It was just a damn picture. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the cab, watched the lot, hoping to catch whoever was messing with me. Nothing. The lot stayed empty. The fourth night, I decided I wasn't going to stop at that rest stop. I drove past it, but by the time I realized I needed to pull over, I was 100 miles further down the highway. I ended up stopping at a different place, some small, isolated truck stop off the road. I parked in a well-lit area, made sure no one was around, and locked up tight. I even double-checked the doors. I was still paranoid, but I thought maybe the person was following me. Maybe they knew my routine, my schedule. I tried to relax, but sleep didn't come easy. When I woke up the next morning, I did my usual check, walked around the rig, checked the tires. And then I stopped dead in my tracks. There it was again. A Polaroid. This time it was taped to the passenger side mirror and not the driver's. I stared at it for a second before I even reached for it. My stomach sank. The picture was taken in broad daylight. It was me standing by my truck doing my check just like I had that morning. It was taken from a distance and there was no one else around. I couldn't understand how they'd done it. I had parked in the well-lit area, and I hadn't seen a soul since I stopped. That's when I started thinking maybe I was being followed. I had no proof of it, but that thought kept gnawing at me. I was starting to feel like I was being watched all the time, like someone was always a step behind me. I kept checking the mirrors when I was on the road looking for anyone hanging around, but nothing. I started avoiding that same rest stop. I couldn't bring myself to go back to it. But the pictures kept showing up, always in the same place, taped to the side mirror. The fifth night, the picture was taken from a higher angle. It was like the person was standing on a truck or something. They had a perfect shot of me, passed out in the sleeper cab. I remember looking at it and thinking, who the hell has been so close to my truck that they can get these shots? I never slept well after that. The paranoia kept creeping in. I couldn't stop thinking about who was doing this. It was like someone knew my every move and knew exactly where I'd be. And they were right there, waiting. The sixth night, I parked in a completely different area, far off the main highways, hoping the isolation would keep me safe. I pulled up to a small, rundown rest stop. No lights, no other trucks around. I figured if I stayed off the radar, maybe the person would leave me alone. But when I woke up the next morning, the photo was there again. This time, it was a picture of me inside the cab, sleeping on my side, but the odd part was, it was taken through the passenger side window. It wasn't just a quick shot. Whoever took it had to have been standing right outside the window for a while to get that kind of clarity. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't care how crazy it sounded. I called the police and told them everything. I told them about the Polaroids, the strange feeling of being watched, the whole damn thing. They said they'd check out the area, but by the time they arrived, there was nothing. No sign of anyone, no footprints, no fingerprints on the photos, nothing. It didn't stop, though. Every night, for a week, the photos kept appearing. No matter where I parked, no matter how isolated I tried to be, there they were, taped to my side mirrors. I don't know who was doing it, or why, but it's been months now, and it still messes with me. I don't stop at rest stops anymore unless it's daylight. And I'd always made sure I'm parked in well-lit areas with other people around. I can't tell if it was some sick game or something more. I made sure the doors were locked, tossed my jacket on the passenger seat, and climbed into the sleeper cab. Normally, I'm a light sleeper, but that night, I was out like a light. No idea what time it was when I fell asleep, but I'd been out for a few hours before it all went south. When I woke up, it wasn't like any normal morning. I was disoriented at first, trying to shake off the fog of sleep. My head was pounding, and the first thing I noticed was how cramped I felt. My legs were bent, the knees up against my chest. I tried to move, but couldn't. That's when I realized something was wrong. I looked around, and it hit me I wasn't in the sleeper cab anymore. I was in the passenger seat of my own truck. I couldn't remember how I got there. I wasn't sure if I was still dreaming or if something had happened while I was asleep. But when I tried to reach for the door, I found my hands were tied. Not just tied up, but zip-tied, and the feeling of plastic biting into my wrists made it clear I wasn't imagining things. My heart started to race. I jerked my arms trying to break the zip ties, but they were tight and I couldn't get them loose. I was completely stuck. I looked out the window and realized something else that made my blood run cold. My truck was moving. The cab wasn't still. I was sitting in the passenger seat of a moving vehicle, and it wasn't me behind the wheel. Whoever was driving was doing it quietly, like they knew exactly what they were doing. The road stretched out in front of me, but everything felt too still, too controlled. I couldn't hear the normal engine noises that usually filled the space when I was driving. I tried to call out, but my voice was hoarse, like I hadn't spoken in hours. "Hey!" I shouted, but the driver didn't respond. I craned my neck to see who was behind the wheel, but all I could see was the top of their head, dark, short hair. A wave of panic hit me. My truck, my rig, it was gone. Whoever was driving it, they had taken it. And me. I was trapped. I pulled against the zip ties again, but it didn't help. I kept trying to figure out what had happened. How did I get from the sleeper cab to the passenger seat? I could barely remember anything after I'd gone to sleep. My mind was foggy, but I distinctly remembered locking up my truck, checking the doors before I climbed into the back. Had someone gotten in while I was sleeping? Or did they wait until I was out cold? I couldn't piece it together. It didn't make sense. I tried to stay calm, though it was hard with the way my pulse was pounding in my ears. I looked around again, hoping for something, anything, that could give me a clue about what was going on. The interior of my truck was just the same, but I realized that my phone was missing. It wasn't in the cup holder where I usually tapped it. I couldn't even feel it in my pockets. I glanced at the driver. Still no sign of him acknowledging me. He was focused on the road, hands steady on the wheel, not speeding, or not acting out of the ordinary. Whoever this guy was, he was calm. Too calm. I didn't know if I should try to talk to him or wait for the right moment to make a break for it. The zip ties were still cutting into my skin and I could feel the blood start to rush to my hands as they became numb from the lack of circulation. I had to get out of this, I had to think. It was when I tried to look out the side window that I saw it. The rearview mirror. The reflection. I could see that the road ahead wasn't just empty, it looked different. The lights weren't the same. The road signs were a blur, but there was something unsettling about the lack of anything familiar. It wasn't just a normal stretch of highway. It felt off. I tried to make up the landscape as we passed, but everything looked the same. The trees were too dark, the fields too still. It was like I was in some kind of endless stretch of nowhere. That's when I knew I wasn't near any truck stop. I wasn't near anything I recognized. For the first time, the driver spoke, but it wasn't to me. He was mumbling something to himself, too quiet for me to make out. It sounded like a chant or something. I strained my ears, but it didn't make sense. It was like he was speaking a language I couldn't understand. I started to panic again, breathing faster. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea who this person was, or where he was taking me, or why. The whole situation felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. I reached for the seatbelt, hoping maybe I could cut through the zip ties with it, but I couldn't get the angle right. The ties were too tight and I was starting to feel lightheaded from the pressure. I needed to think fast. I needed to get out. I kept watching the driver, trying to memorize his movements, waiting for an opening. After what felt like hours, he finally glanced over at me, but he didn't seem surprised. No change in expression. Nothing. "You awake?" he asked in a low voice, almost like he was bored. I didn't answer right away. I was too busy trying to figure out my next move. I knew I had to talk to him, but my mind was racing. "Where are you taking me?" I managed to ask, my voice rough from the fear in my throat. He didn't respond at first, just tapped his eyes on the road, then he said, "You see." Soon enough, that didn't make me feel any better. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I started begging, shouting, anything to get his attention, but he just kept driving like he hadn't heard me. I don't know how long we were on the road, but eventually we hit a dirt road and I knew things were getting worse. The truck bounced and jolted and I felt every bump. The driver didn't slow down. He didn't say a word. I was panicking now, pulling harder at the zip ties, trying anything to break free. And then, suddenly, he pulled over to the side of the road, right in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't see any houses, no lights, just the darkness closing in. The engine shut off, then he looked over at me. He didn't get out. He just sat there, staring at me. I don't know how I did it, but somehow, I broke free of the zip ties. My wrists were raw, but I wasn't thinking about that anymore. I shoved open the door and ran. I didn't know where I was going. Didn't care. I just knew I had to get away. I didn't look back, didn't stop. I don't know how long I ran, but after what felt like forever, I finally came across a house, lights on, someone awake. I knocked like crazy, and they let me in. It took me a while to find my way back to civilization. I never saw my truck again, and I'm still not sure what happened that night. But I know one thing, whoever the driver was, he wasn't just some random guy. He knew what he was doing. And I never want to find out why. I drive across the country a lot for work. I've been doing it for years, so I'm used to the long hours and the late night drives. A few months ago, though, something happened that I still can't shake, and I've been wondering if anyone else has ever had something like this happen to them. It started one night when I was driving through Ohio. I'd been on the road for about 10 hours, and I was getting pretty tired. I decided to pull off at a rest stop and catch some sleep. It was around 3 a.m. when I parked my car, found a decent spot, and went inside to grab a coffee and use the bathroom. Nothing out of the ordinary. When I came back out, I noticed a long-haul truck parked next to my car, one spot away from me, just like it had been when I pulled in. I thought nothing of it. It's a truck stop. Trucks are always there. I didn't think I'd see that truck again after that night, but it showed up again the next day when I stopped for fuel in Indiana. I pulled into the lot and there it was again. The same truck. Same driver, same exact spot, just one space away from mine. I thought it was a coincidence, but by now I was starting to feel a little uneasy. Maybe the guy had a similar schedule to mine, I told myself. Truckers work long hours too. I didn't say anything about it to anyone. I just went about my day, driving across the state, keeping my eyes on the road, but I couldn't stop noticing that damn truck. It didn't stop there. I began to see it at every rest stop I went to. Same truck, same place, one spot over. I thought I was just imagining things at first. There's no way, right? But it kept happening. By the time I reached Missouri, I realized it wasn't a coincidence anymore. It didn't matter what time I stopped, midday, middle of the night, before dawn, it was always there. The truck would park one spot away from mine. Every time. And the driver, he never got out. One day in Kansas, I was really tired, so I stopped earlier than usual. I parked at a rest stop and decided to get some sleep. It was quiet, really quiet, except for the hum of the trucks in the parking lot. When I woke up, I was disoriented, but when I looked out my window there, it was again the same truck parked one space away. This time I decided to get a closer look. I wanted to know who the driver was. Maybe I was just paranoid, but something about the whole situation had me on edge. I walked past the truck, glancing inside, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver. The windows were tinted. I couldn't see a thing, but there was something. I started driving longer hours, trying to outrun the feeling that I was being followed. But it didn't work. Every time I stopped, it was there. The truck, the same damn spot, and then one night in Colorado it got worse. I pulled into a truck stop that wasn't even on my planned route. I thought maybe it would be safe. No way this guy could find me here, but when I pulled in, my stomach dropped. The truck was there again, parked right next to my car. I swear I hadn't seen it in hours, and yet it was parked there waiting for me. This time, I couldn't just walk away. I walked straight up to the truck and knocked on the door. I needed to know who this person was, what the hell they wanted. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but no one answered. No sound, no movement. I knocked harder, starting to panic. I was starting to wonder if the guy was dead inside the cab or maybe something was. Finally, just as I was about to give up and walk away, I heard the faintest sound like a rustle of paper and then a voice. Go back to your car. The voice said low and calm, almost too calm. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck there, right next to the truck, hearing this voice but seeing nothing. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my hands were shaking. You don't need to be here, the voice said again. Just go back. I backed away from the truck without saying anything else. I couldn't bring myself to run, but I moved slowly, cautiously, like if I moved too fast, I'd provoke whatever was going on. I made it back to my car, my heart still hammering in my chest. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if I was losing it or if there was really something more sinister going on. The trucker was still there when I got back in my car and pulled out of the parking lot. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me, that I wasn't alone in that lot anymore. I drove off, my hands still shaking, and didn't stop until I reached a much more populated area with bright lights and other trucks. The truck never showed up after that night, but every time I see a truck on the road now, I feel that same unease, like someone's watching me again. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it was all just a coincidence, and I was tired or stressed out, and it just played tricks on my mind. But I can't shake the feeling that I was being followed for some reason, and I still wonder if I'll ever see that truck again. I don't stop at rest stops alone anymore. I've been a trucker for nearly a decade. I've seen a lot of strange things on the road, but what happened to me that night? It's one of those things I can't quite explain. It doesn't sit right with me, and I still don't know what to think about it. I was driving through the middle of nowhere, some back road in Kentucky, far from the nearest town. It was late. I'd been on the road for a while, and it had started to rain. The kind of heavy drizzly rain that makes everything feel too quiet, too still. My headlights cut through the darkness and all I could see were trees and the occasional sign for a rest area or gas station. Around 2 a.m., I saw something on the side of the road. A woman waving her arms. At first, I thought she was just hitchhiking, but then I saw the look on her face as I got closer. She looked scared, frantic even. I pulled over, rolling down the window just to crack. "Please, you have to help me," she yelled before I could even ask her what was going on. I was kidnapped. They're after me. Please. I didn't know what to think. At first, I figured she was just a runaway or maybe someone who had a bit too much to drink, but something about her voice sounded so desperate. She was shaking, soaked from the rain. And her clothes were all disheveled. She had this wild, panicked look in her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. I told her to get in the truck, and she did without hesitation. She didn't even ask where I was going. She just climbed into the passenger seat and immediately closed the door, looking over her shoulder like she was checking to make sure no one was following her. Once she settled in, I tried to get more details. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Who did this to you?" She was breathing heavily, still glancing out the window. "I don't know. I was at a party. I don't even remember how I got there. I woke up in a van. They kept me locked up. They were going to hurt me. I know it. I ran as soon as I could. Please, you have to get me out of here. The more she talked, the more I started to feel uneasy. I don't know if it was the way she looked at me or if it was the frantic energy she had, but something didn't sit right. I've picked up hitchhikers before, but this felt different. I didn't know if I was dealing with someone in real danger or someone who might be a little off, but then she said something that stopped me cold. I think they're following me. I think they're behind us. Please, you have to get out of here. I turned to look out the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind us but the dark, empty road, but she was practically jumping out of her seat, her eyes wide with panic. They'll be here any second, she said, voice trembling. They know I'm gone. You have to get me out of here. I don't know what they'll do to me if they catch me. I kept my focus on the road but started to feel the knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. I didn't know what to believe. Was she really in danger, or was this some kind of scam? I couldn't take the risk of ignoring her if she was telling the truth. I had to call for help. All right, I'm calling 911, I told her, pulling my phone out of my pocket. She froze, her hand shooting out to grab my arm. No. Please, don't. They'll know, I called. Fail. Before she could finish, I had already dialed the number. I didn't know what else to do. The dispatcher answered almost immediately, and I explained what the woman had told me, how she claimed to have escaped a kidnapping and that she was in danger. The woman's grip on my arm tightened as she listened to me talk. Her eyes were darting all over the place. I told the dispatcher where we were, gave them a description of the woman, and told them I was on a lonely stretch of road heading west. The whole time, she was breathing heavily, her eyes wide, and she kept turning around to look out the back window. I'm sending a unit out to you right now, the dispatcher said. Stay on the line and don't let her out of your sight. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if I believed she was really in trouble. I kept my phone in my hand, waiting for the sound of sirens in the distance. But then, just as the call ended, something happened that made my stomach drop. The woman suddenly pushed the door open and jumped out of the truck. I slammed the brakes, barely keeping the truck under control as she stumbled out into the rain. I was too stunned to do anything at first. I shouted at her, but she didn't stop. She was running fast, heading straight for the woods. I threw the truck in park and jumped out shouting her name. Hey, get back here, the cops are on the way, but she didn't turn around. She just kept running, disappearing into the dark trees at the edge of the road. I stood there, frozen for a moment, wondering what the hell was happening. Was she really in danger? Or had I just gotten tangled up in something I couldn't understand? I didn't follow her. I should have, maybe. I don't know. But something in my gut told me it was better to stay where I was. I couldn't shake the thought that something was off about all of it. I didn't trust her, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't just the way she acted, it was the way everything had felt from the moment she jumped into the truck. Like I was part of something I didn't fully understand. I called 911 again, but by the time they answered, the woman was gone. There was no sign of her, no lights, no movement. I explained what had happened, but the dispatcher seemed just as confused as I was. I waited for what felt like forever, hoping someone would show up, but no one ever did. No police, no search. It was as if the whole thing had never happened. I stayed in my truck the rest of the night, too shaking to move. I don't know what happened to that woman, but I couldn't help thinking that maybe I had been part of something I didn't understand. Maybe she wasn't the victim, then maybe the people who were chasing her were just as confused as I was. To this day, I still don't know what happened. But I never stopped for hitchhikers anymore. Not after that. It was late and I'd been driving for hours. I'm a long-haul trucker, so it wasn't unusual for me to be on the road this late, but that night something felt different. The sky had darkened quicker than usual, and I could see the storm clouds rolling in from the west. I'd been going through a stretch of empty highway, miles and miles without much to look at, that when I spotted the diner, one of those old roadside places that doesn't seem to give much traffic anymore. I could barely make out the neon sign flickering in the distance, but I figured it'd be a good spot to grab a cup of coffee and stretch my legs. I pulled in and parked my truck under the dim light of the diner's sign. The place didn't look like much, a little worn down, but I didn't mind. It had that quiet, kind of eerie vibe that sometimes made you feel like you were the only one in the world. I got out and noticed how silent everything was. Even though the rain had started to pour, the air was still. No crickets, no wind. Just stillness. I walked inside, and the bell over the door rang softly. There was a woman behind the counter, probably in her mid-40s. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun. I slid into the booth, and the table was old, scratched up, with a faded red checkered pattern. I didn't think much of it until I noticed something odd, the word written in chalk under the table. I bent down to get a better look, figuring maybe it was just some kid's scribble or something. But when I saw it, my heart sank. My license plate number was written there. My exact license plate number. I stared at it for a moment, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was a coincidence. But that seemed impossible. I had just parked my truck outside, and there was no way anyone had seen my license plate. I hadn't passed anyone on the highway in miles. I looked around the diner again, making sure no one was watching me. The old man was still in his corner, eyes fixed on his mug, and the woman behind the counter hadn't moved. I sat up and quickly rubbed my hand over the number. It wasn't much, just a faint trace, like it had been written with chalk and left to fade, but it was unmistakably mine. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I didn't say anything to the woman at the counter, didn't ask if she knew about it. I didn't know what to do. I figured maybe someone else had been here before me, playing a joke or leaving some strange message, but something about it felt wrong. I tried to shake it off and ordered a coffee. The woman didn't seem to care. She just nodded and went to get it. As I waited, I started thinking back. I had been on this road before, but not for a few years. It was a route I didn't take often. I couldn't remember ever stopping here before, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The coffee arrived, and I sipped it slowly. It tasted bland, like diner coffee usually does. I kept my eyes on the table, on my license plate number, trying to ignore it. But I couldn't. I had this feeling like someone was watching me. Not from inside the diner, but from somewhere out there. The old man had finished his drink and left without saying a word. The rain had picked up harder now, and the diner felt colder. I figured I'd better leave soon. I didn't want to linger, not with that damn number staring back at me. So I tossed some cash on the table and stood up. That's when I noticed something else. Underneath the booth, on the floor, was a small piece of paper wedged between the boards. I bent down, cautiously pulling it out, thinking it was just a napkin or something. But when I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. It was a note. In jagged, uneven handwriting, it said, "I'm watching you." I froze, my heart thumping in my chest. I didn't know what to think. It was like everything that had been happening in the last few minutes clicked into place. The number under the table, the strange quietness, the feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned around quickly, half expecting someone to be standing there. But no one was. The woman behind the counter was still there, doing something behind the counter. The old man was gone. The diner was quiet and the rain was louder now, but I knew something was off. I didn't waste any more time. I crumpled the note, shoved it in my pocket, and walked out the door. As I stepped in after the rain, I glanced back at the diner. The neon light flickered above the door. I wasn't sure why, but I felt like I had to leave. I had to get out of there. I made my way back to my truck, trying to stay calm. But as I reached the driver's side door, I looked up. Someone was standing in the rain, about 20 feet away, just watching me. I didn't get a good look at their face, but I could tell they were tall. Their outline was barely visible in the dim light. My heart raced again. I didn't say anything. I didn't even move. I just slid into the truck, locked the door, and started the engine. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the lot and back onto the highway. I drove for hours without stopping. Every so often, I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights behind me. But there was nothing. I don't know what happened at that diner. I don't know who left that number under the table, or who wrote that note, or who was standing outside in the rain. But I've never gone back to that stretch of highway again. And I still check my license plate every time I stop somewhere, just to make sure it hasn't happened again. It's probably just a coincidence, right? But I don't know, something about it all still feels wrong. It started a few months ago. I had just finished a run up to Oregon and was heading back down south to pick up another load. The usual routine. I'd been driving for years, long enough to know how things go on the road. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes you get the strange call or weird look from someone at a truck stop, but you brush it off. This particular day, though, felt off right from the start. I was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, along Highway 95, the stretch of road that barely has anything but desert on both sides for miles. It was around 11 p.m. I had just passed a small town and wasn't expecting to see much of anything for the next few hours. My truck was running fine. I had some coffee and the radio was playing softly. I was looking forward to getting some sleep once I found a decent place to park for the night. The usual quiet night drive. Then the phone rang. It wasn't anything too strange at first. I figured it was a dispatch or maybe someone from home trying to get a hold of me. But when I looked at the screen, it said blocked. I wasn't about to answer a random blocked number, but something made me pick up anyway. Hello? I said, keeping my eyes on the road. There was silence on the other end. For a long moment. Just static. Then, a voice, barely above a whisper, asked, "Where are you?" I froze for a second. I wasn't sure if it was some prank call or maybe someone playing games, but I didn't recognize the voice. It sounded distorted, like they were trying to mask it on purpose. "Excuse me?" I asked, still keeping my eyes on the road, my grip tightening on the wheel. "Where are you?" The voice repeated, but this time it was a little more urgent. I glanced around, not that it mattered much. The road ahead was dark, and there weren't any lights for miles. "I'm on Highway 95, I said, my voice a little uncertain now. "I'm heading south, almost 2. And just like that, the call ended. I didn't think much of it, just assumed it was some weird random thing. Maybe someone who dialed the wrong number. I went on driving, trying to put it out of my mind. But then the calls started coming in more frequently. Same block number. Same quiet voice asking the same question. "Where are you?" It was always the same question. Over and over. And the timing was always odd, right when I was in spots with no cell service. That didn't make sense to me. How could they know where I was if I had no service? I got to a point where I couldn't shake it. I'd be in the middle of nowhere on a stretch of road where my phone couldn't even get a bar and my phone would ring, same block number, same question, "Where are you?" I started ignoring it, but after a few times it started to creep me out. I wasn't the kind of person to be paranoid, but the fact that the calls kept coming, no matter where I was, especially when I was in areas with zero service, it felt wrong. It didn't add up. A few days later, I was parked at a truck stop outside of Reno, catching up on some sleep. My phone rang again, this time around 3 a.m. I was croaky, but I still checked it out of habit. Block number. I almost didn't pick it up, but something made me do it. "Where are you?" The voice said, quiet but still sharp. I was half asleep when I answered. "What?" "I'm at a truck stop, Reno." "Why do you keep calling me?" There was a pause. And then the voice said something that made my blood run cold. "You're not at Reno." I looked around the parking lot. I could see the lights of the truck stop, the other rigs parked around me. I felt a tightness in my chest. "What do you mean?" "I'm right here," I said. My voice more strained now. "I'm at the damn truck stop." The call ended abruptly. No goodbyes. No nothing. Just gone. At that point, I started freaking out. I wasn't even sure who would be doing this or why, but it wasn't just a prank anymore. I wasn't being paranoid, and it wasn't coincidence anymore. Whoever this was, they knew where I was, or at least, they thought they did. I started paying attention to every stop, every town I went through. I'd pull off into a gas station or rest stop, and the calls would start again. Each time, they'd ask the same damn thing, and each time, the voice would sound more familiar. but I couldn't place it. It wasn't a voice I recognized. It got worse when I was in Nevada just outside of Ely. I was parked at another truck stop feeling more jumpy than usual. My phone rang again, same block number. I didn't pick it up this time, but something told me I had to. I hit answer, then immediately heard breathing on the other end. No voice. Just the sound of someone breathing, but heavy and slow. I could feel my heart rate pick up. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't even know where I went from there, but I just drove as far and as fast as I could. I made it clear I wasn't going to wait around for this to escalate. I didn't stop for hours, not until I was far enough away from Ely and didn't feel like I was being watched anymore. I'm still driving. Still working. But I haven't gotten another call since that night. It's been weeks, and I've made sure to avoid any areas where I've gotten those calls. The block numbers haven't run through again. But the strange thing is, every now and then, while I'm out there on the road, especially at night, I still hear that voice. Not on the phone, just in the back of my mind. That whisperer. The one that asks, "Where are you? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you."